Everyone in Charlottesville, Virginia, knew Eleanor Whitmore's future before she ever learned to write her name. From the moment she was born in the private wing of St. Anne's Hospital, wrapped in ivory blankets and old expectations, Eleanor belonged to a promise made long before she could consent to it. The Whitmores and the Hawthorns, two families whose names opened doors money alone could not, had sealed a quiet agreement over decades-old whiskey and polished smiles. Eleanor would marry Alexander Hawthorne. Everyone called him the Duke. Not because of any royal title, but because the Hawthorne men carried themselves like nobility. Old East Coast power, Ivy League bloodlines, private airstrips, and charity galas where secrets mattered more than speeches. Growing up, Eleanor didn't question it. How could she? It was woven into everything: family dinners, holiday invitations, even her education. While other girls dreamed of becoming actresses or doctors, Eleanor was trained to be presentable, graceful, strategic. The perfect future Mrs. Hawthorne. By the time she was 12, she could sit through a 3-hour charity auction without fidgeting. At 16, she learned which forks to use and which truths to hide. At 25, she stood at the edge of her childhood bedroom, staring at her wedding gown hanging from the armoire like a silent witness. The dress was custom-made in New York, silk imported from Italy, hand-stitched pearls. It had taken 6 months and more money than most people's annual salaries. Her wedding was in 3 days. Eleanor exhaled slowly and turned toward the window overlooking the Whitmore estate. Autumn had painted the trees in deep reds and golds. Guests were already arriving, luxury SUVs lining the gravel drive, staff bustling, florists arguing quietly about centerpieces. Downstairs, her mother's voice carried sharply through the hall. "Eleanor, darling, the Hawthorns just confirmed the seating chart change." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. "I'll be right down." She smoothed her sweater and descended the stairs, her heels clicking against polished wood. The living room looked like a magazine spread: fresh flowers, linen sofas, crystal glasses untouched. Her father stood near the fireplace, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. "What change?" Eleanor asked calmly. Her mother, Margaret Whitmore, forced a smile. Alexander requested his sister be moved closer to the front row. Minor thing. Of course Alexander requested it. They'd grown up together, private schools, summer homes in Maine, boarding flights to Europe as casually as road trips. To the world, they were perfect, elegant, unshakable, but lately something felt off. Alexander had been distant, calls shorter, texts delayed. When Eleanor visited New York last month, he'd canceled dinner twice. Said work was overwhelming. Family matters, family matters. Eleanor swallowed. "Is he coming today?" Her mother hesitated for half a second too long. "He's running behind. He'll be here for the rehearsal dinner tomorrow." Eleanor nodded, pretending that didn't sting. From the doorway, a softer voice chimed in. "Ellie, you look like you're about to walk into a board meeting, not get married." Eleanor turned to see Lydia Whitmore, her younger sister, leaning against the frame. Lydia was 2 years younger, all effortless charm and loose curls, the kind of beauty that didn't try. Lydia had never been part of the promise. She was free in ways Eleanor had never been allowed to be. Eleanor smiled faintly. "Someone has to be serious in this family." Lydia laughed and crossed the room, linking her arm through Eleanor's. "You'll be fine. Besides, Alex has adored you since we were kids." Had he? Eleanor remembered being 10, watching Alexander teach Lydia how to swim at the lake house. Remembered how Lydia laughed, fearless, while Eleanor waited patiently on the dock like she was supposed to. She pushed the memory away. Later that evening, Eleanor stood alone in the garden as the sun dipped below the horizon. Strings of lights glowed overhead, illuminating white roses and carefully placed candles. Everything was perfect, too perfect. Her phone buzzed at a message from Alexander. Running late again. We'll talk soon. I promise. She stared at the screen, her chest tightening soon. Always soon, from across the lawn, Eleanor noticed Lydia laughing with one of the Hawthorne cousins. Her face lit up, carefree. For a fleeting moment, Eleanor felt something unfamiliar twist inside her. Not jealousy, but unease. As if something precious was quietly slipping out of alignment. Eleanor tucked her phone away and told herself she was imagining things. After all, this wedding had been decided before either of them were born. Nothing could change that, right? The morning sun spilled over the Whitmore estate, brushing the manicured lawns with a soft golden glow.
Eleanor satte her vanity, setting a hair reflection.
Her wedding gown hung behind her, a silent reminder of the day ahead. But her reflection looked different somehow, less confident, more uncertain. The whispered words from last night echoed in her mind. Alexander says he's not sure anymore. She shook her head.
No.
It had to be a misunderstanding. The Duke, Alexander Hawthorne, had always been steadfast, serious, untouchable. A man who made calculated decisions with precision. He wouldn't back out of a promise. Couldn't. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Lydia slipped into the room, a tray of coffee in hand. Morning, Ellie. You look tense. Eleanor forced a smile. Just the usual pre-wedding nerves. Lydia tilted her head, eyes sharp. You know, if Alex is acting weird, you should call him. Don't wait for him to explain himself at the altar. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the porcelain cup. Call him? No, she thought. It's not proper. Not the way things are done. Not the way the Whitmores do things. The morning passed in a blur of hair, makeup, and rehearsals. Eleanor practiced walking down the aisle, smiling when she was told to smile, perfecting the gentle tilt of her head. But she couldn't shake the nagging unease that had settled over her like a heavy fog. During the rehearsal, Alexander arrived. He looked as impeccable as ever, tailored suit, neatly combed hair, a polite smile, but something was different. His eyes, usually so confident, darted toward Lydia several times. Eleanor noticed, her stomach tightening. The rehearsal went on. The guests practiced their lines, the bridal party moved chairs, the photographer snapped shots. And through it all, Eleanor kept an eye on Alexander. At dinner that night, the tension in the room was palpable. The Whitmores had gone through the motions, toast, wine, polite conversation, but Alexander barely touched his food. Margaret Whitmore, ever the hostess, tried to maintain control. Alexander, dear, you look distracted. Everything all right? Alexander cleared his throat. Yes, everything's fine. Lydia, sitting beside him, laughed softly at something he whispered. Eleanor forced a smile, but her heart sank. She excused herself and stepped out onto the terrace, the cold night air hitting her face. She didn't notice the figure approaching until a voice spoke softly behind her. Ellie, her heart jumped. Alexander stood there, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the ground. He looked vulnerable, human in a way she hadn't seen in years. What's wrong? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He hesitated. Then finally he said, I can't do this. Eleanor froze. The words hit her like a freight train. What do you mean? I mean the wedding. I'm not sure anymore. Her chest tightened. Not sure. He ran a hand through his hair. Ellie, it's Lydia. I didn't expect it. I thought I would be happy, but Eleanor's world tilted. Her little sister? Alexander's hesitation was because of Lydia. Alexander, this is insane, she said, voice trembling. You promised me. Our families promised this. I know. I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't plan for this, but I can't ignore how I feel. Eleanor's knees felt weak. Everything she had been taught, duty, loyalty, honor, clashed violently with what was happening. She wanted to scream, cry, run, confront Lydia, but she did none of those things. She stood frozen, her mind racing. From the terrace, she could hear Lydia laughing inside, unaware of the storm brewing in her sister's heart. Eleanor turned back to Alexander. You want her? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded, guilt etched across his face. Eleanor's hands trembled. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete unraveling of her life's blueprint. She had spent 25 years preparing for this marriage, only to find the man she loved. No, the man she was promised wanted her sister. She swallowed, forcing her tears back. Then, I guess there's nothing left to say. Alexander opened his mouth, but Eleanor walked back inside, leaving him alone on the terrace, the cool night wrapping around him like a shroud of regret. Later that night, in her room, Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her wedding gown. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at the estate gates. Midnight. Alone. There are things you need to know about Alexander. Eleanor's heart raced. Her life had always been planned, predictable. But now, the first thread of chaos had been pulled, and she had no idea what would unravel next. Midnight wrapped the Whitmore estate in a cloak of silence. Eleanor slipped out of her room, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The night air was crisp, the moon casting a silver glow over the estate gates. Every shadow seemed alive, whispering doubts she didn't want to hear. The mysterious text had shaken her to the core. There are things you need to know about Alexander. She didn't recognize the number, but instinct told her this was urgent. Someone knew something her family had kept hidden, perhaps even from her. As she approached the gate, she saw a figure leaning against the wrought iron, tall, shadowed by a hood. You came, the voice said softly. Eleanor took a cautious step forward. Who are you? Someone who wants to help you, the figure replied. Inside this estate, things are not what they seem. Alexander, he's not the man you think he is. Her mind spun. Not the man she thought he was? She had trusted him her whole life, or at least, trusted the promise that tied them together. Why should I believe you? She demanded. The figure reached into a coat pocket and handed her an envelope. Read this. Then decide. Eleanor's hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside were photographs, Alexander meeting secretly with someone she didn't recognize. But it wasn't just the meetings. There were notes about investments, family betrayals, and deals that went far beyond anything she had ever known. And in the corner of each photo, there was a small, almost hidden mark, the Whitmore family crest. Her blood ran cold. These were her family's own secrets, documents Alexander had tried to keep hidden. And worse, they hinted at something more personal, something that could destroy the trust she had in everyone around her. What is this? Eleanor whispered, glancing up. The figure shook their head. You need to confront him. But be careful. The Whitmore's world, it's more dangerous than you think. And Lydia, she may not be as innocent as she appears. Eleanor's stomach churned. Could Lydia have known? Could her younger sister, the carefree, charming Lydia, be part of this twisted web of secrets? She clenched the envelope tightly, her knuckles white. Every plan, every expectation, Every promised future she had counted on was unraveling. The next day, Eleanor tried to act normal. She attended a brunch with a bridal party, laughed when expected, smiled when prompted. But inside, every glance at Alexander made her heart hammer painfully. He avoided her gaze, as if sensing that the first crack in their perfect world had formed. During the reception rehearsal, Eleanor decided she needed answers. After everyone had left, she confronted Alexander in the library, where the evening sun spilled through the tall windows, making dust motes dance like tiny specters. "Alexander," she began, holding the envelope tightly. "What is all this?" He looked at the papers, his eyes widening in alarm. "Eleanor, don't lie to me," she interrupted. "Why are you meeting in secret? Why are there notes about my family? And why, oh, why Lydia?" Alexander ran a hand through his hair, frustration and guilt warping his face. "It's complicated. Your family, they've always had expectations, but there are things you don't know, things I can't explain yet." "Then explain," she demanded. "You're about to ruin everything. Our wedding, my life." He shook his head, his voice breaking slightly. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't go through with this wedding, not with everything that's been hidden from you. I thought I could protect you from it." Eleanor felt a wave of betrayal crash over her. All her life, she had been groomed to follow the path laid out for her. And now, the path had dissolved beneath her feet. Before she could say more, a sound came from the doorway, a faint laugh that made her blood run cold. Lydia stood there, arms crossed, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Surprised to see me?" she said softly. Eleanor stared at her, disbelief and confusion warring inside her. What do you know?" Lydia stepped closer. "More than you think. Alexander isn't the only one keeping secrets. And if you think this is about betrayal, you have no idea what's coming." Eleanor's heart raced. The sister she had trusted, the sister she had always protected, now seemed like a stranger. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Shadows stretched across the walls, mirroring the uncertainty and fear that tightened around Eleanor's chest. This wedding, this promise, everything, it was never just about love. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the Whitmore estate like a warning. Eleanor couldn't eat, couldn't focus, couldn't breathe. Every step felt heavy as she made her way to the breakfast room, where her family sat pretending everything was normal. The laughter, the clinking of silverware, the polite conversation, all of it felt like a cruel performance. Lydia was there, smiling brightly, sipping orange juice as if nothing had happened. Eleanor's stomach twisted. She needed answers. Now, after a moment, Eleanor excused herself and found Lydia in the garden, the same place she had once walked with her sister as children. The crisp autumn air did little to calm her nerves. "Lydia," Eleanor began, her voice sharp but controlled. "I need to know the truth. Did you have anything to do with Alexander?" With all of this, Lydia looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor's hands trembled. "Don't play dumb. I know you've been involved somehow. I know you've been hiding things, secrets. And I know you've been seeing Alexander." Lydia's lips curved into a faint, almost sinister smile. "Seeing Alexander? Ellie, you're imagining things. He's just confused." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Confused? Or drawn to you? Don't lie to me, Lydia. I grew up protecting you. And now I'm supposed to believe you had nothing to do with this betrayal?" Lydia stepped closer, her tone calm but icy. "Ellie, there's a lot you don't know. You've been living in a world of expectations, a world your parents and Alexander built for you. But the truth is, your family isn't as perfect as you think. And neither am I. Eleanor's heart pounded. What are you talking about? Lydia hesitated, then finally said, Your father, he made deals. Deals that involved Alexander, the Hawthorns, and even me. I didn't ask for it, but I got involved because I had to protect myself. You think I'm the villain here, but if you knew everything, Eleanor's mind raced. Every moment of her life suddenly felt manipulated, orchestrated. The Whitmores, the Hawthorns, the Duke himself, it had all been carefully controlled. And she had been nothing more than a pawn. Why now? Eleanor whispered. Why tell me now? Because it's too late to hide it anymore, Lydia said, her eyes glinting. Alexander has feelings, real feelings for me.
And
I didn't plan for it either.
but he came to me.
And I couldn't turn him away. Not after everything he's done to protect you, to protect your family. Eleanor's chest tightened. Every carefully laid plan, every promise, every expectation gone. Her life had been built on someone else's decisions, and now even the people she trusted most were betraying her. Before she could respond, a sudden noise came from the estate, her father's voice raised in anger, shouting at someone in the study. Eleanor exchanged a glance with Lydia. This isn't over, Lydia said softly, walking away before Eleanor could say anything. Eleanor stood alone in the garden, the envelope from the mysterious text burning in her pocket. She had discovered the depth of deception, the tangled web of secrets, and the hidden motives that had been lurking in her family for years. Her heart was heavy, but a small flame of determination flickered inside her. She wouldn't let this betrayal define her. Not completely. She had to find out the full truth about Alexander, about Lydia, about her family, and reclaim control over her life. That night, Eleanor crept back into the library. Alexander was there, reviewing papers, looking exhausted but focused. When he saw her, he straightened immediately. I know you're angry, he said quietly. I wish I could explain everything before this. But the truth is, it's complicated. And I don't want to hurt you more. Eleanor placed the envelope on the table between them. Then tell me everything. No more secrets. No more lies. Alexander hesitated, then nodded. You deserve the truth. All of it. But be warned, some of it will change everything you thought you knew about this family and about me. Eleanor swallowed hard. She had spent her entire life preparing for a perfect wedding, but now she was preparing for something far more dangerous. The truth. The library was silent, the only sound the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. Eleanor and Alexander sat across from each other, the envelope of secrets lying between them like a dividing line. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Tonight, everything would change. Eleanor, Alexander began, his voice low and strained. There's more to your family and mine than anyone lets on. The Whitmores and the Hawthorns have always been about power, alliances, wealth, influence. This marriage, it wasn't about love. It was about consolidating control. Eleanor swallowed hard, the words cutting deep. So, everything, all of it, my life, my plans were never really mine? He shook his head. I never wanted it that way. I wanted to protect you. But the truth is, your father made deals with my father long before you were born. They decided who would marry who, how the families would grow stronger, and what secrets would stay buried. Her hands shook as she clutched the envelope. And Lydia? Alexander sighed. She didn't plan to be the center of this either. But she and I, we couldn't ignore what we felt. It's not about betrayal. It's about being honest, for the first time with ourselves. Eleanor's mind raced. Betrayal,
Love. Lies.
family loyalty. Every memory she had, every promise she had believed in, felt like it was slipping through her fingers. Then came the final revelation. Alexander reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, emails, letters, and photographs that proved the depth of manipulation. The Whitmores had orchestrated alliances, encouraged certain relationships, and even pressured Alexander at times to secure the marriage. The truth was worse than Eleanor had imagined. She had been a pawn in a game of wealth and influence, her emotions secondary to the ambitions of those around her. Tears welled in her eyes. All my life, everything I thought I had, it was never mine. Alexander reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. You're stronger than they ever imagined. You can choose now. You can step out of the game and make your own life. Eleanor looked at him, then at Lydia, who had entered silently, her expression unreadable. Lydia, were you part of this? Lydia shook her head.
No.
I wanted what was right, not power. But I couldn't stand by while lies continued. I told the truth when I had to, and yes, Alexander and I care for each other. But I never meant to hurt you, Ellie. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. The betrayal had cut deep, but the clarity was liberating. She had a choice: continue as a pawn or reclaim her life. I won't be anyone's pawn anymore, Eleanor said firmly. I will not marry because it's expected. I will marry or not because it's my choice. Alexander nodded, admiration in his eyes. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. The sisters exchanged a long look. For the first time, there was understanding. Pain, yes, but also a bond forged by honesty and survival. Days later, the wedding was quietly called off. The Whitmores and Hawthorns were forced to confront the truth. The old alliances, the manipulations, the unspoken rules, they no longer held power over Eleanor. She walked away from the family estates with her head held high, her heart bruised but unbroken. Alexander remained in her life, but on terms that were real, honest, and voluntary. Lydia continued her path as well, free from the weight of expectations. And Eleanor? She began a life she could claim as her own, decisions made for her, but now choices made by herself. For the first time, she felt the exhilaration of true freedom. The promise she had been born into was gone, but the promise she made to herself, to live authentically, fiercely, and honestly, was just beginning.